If there's anything I've learned from my Binding Blade Ironmans, it's that a lot of the roster tends to get overlooked. When you think of FE6, you think of Rutger deleting every single boss from his joining chapter onward. You think of Melody being one of the strongest flyers in the entire franchise that practically breaks Binding Blade. Or heck, you even think of units like Gonzi, since he has the unique niche of being a playable brigand. And who can blame you? Just listen to that war cry, man. But I say, there's more than enough praise going around for these units. I want to talk about some units that have really grown on me during my last 2 Ironmans of FE6, and trust me when I say, they're doing their part just fine. My name is Davis G, and today I'm going to pitch you 5 Binding Blade units you should use in your next run. Let's get started. First up, it's none other than the Banana Merc himself, Armor Slayer. Oh, right. Sorry, Ogier. Joining in Chapter 8 alongside Barthe and Wendy, Ogier seems to be a pretty mediocre unit on paper. He starts with decent strength and speed, but fragile as can be on a joining map littered with swords, lances, and magic. By this point in the game, it's very likely the player has trained up Deke, seeing very little point in investing into another mercenary. On top of that, hero crests are incredibly hard to come by in Binding Blade. This limits the player's options in who they can promote, unless they save a lot of money for secret shops. Now, while you certainly could pass on Ogier to invest into Deke, Ogier has the potential to be on par with, or even better than Deke long term. When you take a look at their base stats side by side, Ogier is only 1 to 2 points behind Deke's base stats in several areas and 2 levels behind Deke. In terms of growth rates, Ogier actually kind of clears Deke's with a comparable HP, comparable strength, higher speed, higher luck, comparable defense, and comparable res. While Deke might clear Ogier with a higher skill growth, I don't find this particularly impressive considering how accurate swords generally are in the Binding Blade. Now, Deke will very likely have been given plenty of levels by the player at this point in the game, so let's say level 10. Here are his average stats. And now, let's also bring up Ogier's average level 10 stats. While Ogier might not hit as hard as Deke, he has more potential becoming faster and dodgier than Deke. Given the higher levels that the enemies will have in Ogier's joining chapter, he'll have no trouble catching up to Deke at this level. On top of that, Ogier can easily get more XP given the abundance of axes coming his way during the Western Isles arc. And considering his high speed and luck potential, he'll practically be matrix dodging his way through a lot of those clumsy pirates. There could even be the instance where the player's Deke is met with the terrible fate of becoming stat screwed. In that instance, why not give the other mercenary a try? I found that Ogier's speed and luck give him the unique role of being a dodge tank hero. Considering the generally low hit rates that plague FE6, this gives Ogier plenty of leverage to pop off. Given enough time and investment, you'll be rewarded with a unit that can become a permanent addition to your roster. If his stats still don't convince you, don't worry, there are ways to make up for it. Ogier's supports primarily aid in the stats where he needs it most. Lilina, for instance, can grow relatively quickly with Ogier, giving him attack, defense, and crit. And while Barthe is an unpopular pick, his ice affinity can help patch out Ogier's defenses, and in the context of an Ironman, you need all the tools you can get to increase your odds of winning. Speaking of Ogier's supports, let's talk about a massive meme unit in FE6. That's right, we're talking about everyone's favorite 1x1 Lego piece, Barthe.
What do you mean bro's built like a 1x1 Lego piece? What even is a 1x1 Lego piece? Yep, you're banned. Have a good night.
People claim that Barthe is one of the worst units in the game, and I absolutely see why. Barthe joins in Chapter 8 as a level 9 Armor Knight. Armor Knights are generally regarded as one of the worst classes in Fire Emblem, boasting low speed and high defense. Now let me tell you, Barthe amplifies the strengths of an Armor Knight while leaning heavily into the class's weaknesses. His bases and growths are exceptional in HP, strength, and defense, but that's about it. The downside is that his skill and speed bases are atrocious, and don't hold your breath about growing them either. Speaking from experience, it's rare to see it happen. Barthe also has the unfortunate downside of having access to generally less accurate weapons. And Barthe, of course, starts with the Steel Lance in his inventory. Barthe is the very definition of a volatile unit. Where he excels at, he does so and more. But he also has fatal flaws that hold him back significantly. That doesn't mean you should sleep on him, though. Barthe will generally hit hard and tank physical hits like it's nothing to him. Given how many reinforcement blobs the Binding Blade likes to throw at you, having a wall to get through enemy phase is always a nice boon. Besides, even if Barthe does get doubled, it won't really matter when his defense stat shrugs off most attacks. And on the occasion that Barthe does hit an enemy, he'll hit very hard with his high strength stat. The main thing to be mindful of when using Barthe are, of course, effective weaponry and magic units. These will melt Barthe if you're not careful, but generally can be avoided with careful planning and the general lack of magic units compared to physical units throughout the Binding Blade. But what about his low skill stat? Don't worry, there's plenty of ways to keep Barthe rolling. In Chapter 7, you can buy some Slim Lances which will increase Barthe's odds of hitting even more. An 80% hit rate stat on the Slim Lance versus the Steel Lance's 55% is a significant boost. While the Slim Lance might not have a lot of might, Barthe's high strength allows him to utilize this weapon very well. On top of that, all the supports give him that much needed boost to his hit rate, and they grow relatively fast. Each support rank gives Barthe a plus 5% boost to his hit rate. While that may not sound like a lot, any hit boost in FE6 matters a ton compared to the other entries. And if you really want to get creative, Barthe has access to a special move that allows him to guarantee hit and crit any enemy he goes up against, no matter the hit rate. If you position Boars and Wendy adjacent to an enemy unit, then have Barthe attack that unit, this will proc the oh-so-satisfying triangle attack. This technique can be utilized to help Barthe get going in his joining chapter, since Wendy is already on the map, and provided you've kept Boars alive until this point. With enough dedication and XP, Barthe can even help out against the axe-dominant Western Isles arc with his bulky stats, let alone the pesky nomads of Sakai. Speaking of Sakai, Barthe is a very capable unit to aid you in this very infamous route. Most nomads in the Sakai maps will do roughly around 18 to 22 damage with their short bows, effectively making Barthe an unstoppable force to soak up those nasty enemy phases as a general. Heck, if you want to be real funny, have Barthe pick up Roy and carry him through the ambush spawn tents and monkeys map. It's always nice for Roy to have a mobile fallout shelter, huh? Again, I do want to emphasize that Barthe is an extremely volatile unit, but I think that's part of the guy's charm. Every unit in the Binding Blade has a role to play in your army, given how difficult the enemies can be on hard mode. And if you need a physical wall that can reliably tank with enough training, why not give Barthe a chance? Meme units are beloved in Fire Emblem for a reason. I mean, just look at Marty Party from Thracia. If you're a player willing to try out a meme unit, give Barthe time in the spotlight of your next run. Up next is none other than the axe hero herself, Echidna. Joining in the A route of the Western Isles, Echidna is a unit that is commonly not used for several reasons. The first is the struggle to recruit her. Echidna spawns in front of a house surrounded by 3 axe fighters. The worst part is that Echidna is weighed down by her steel axe, making it possible for her to die on the turn she spawns. This can especially suck for players, forcing them to pray to RNGesus lest they either reset or move forward without Echidna. The second reason is her base stats. While her 18 base speed and 19 skill are exceptional, her defense and strength leave a lot to be desired. This puts Echidna in a rather awkward position. She's able to reliably double most enemies with the right weaponry, but lacks a significant amount of force behind her attacks. However, I would say Echidna serves her role best like that of a mid-game Jagan. By the time she joins, Marcus and Zealot will become less viable in combat, being not quite as able to set up kills for their allies. Echidna, on the other hand, with her exceptional speed, allowing her to double enemies in the mid-game, but do just enough damage to set up kills for the scrubs on your team. Having access to both swords and axes, Echidna can have an answer for just about any mid-game enemy thrown her way. Her weapon ranks of C in swords and B in axes allow her to utilize solid weapons right off the bat, like killer weapons. Killer weapons in the Binding Blade are generally regarded as some of the best weapons in the game. While lacking the might of a silver weapon, their accuracy is generally reliable while giving a solid crit chance to any unit using these weapons. Needless to say, killer weapons can make anyone stand out on the battlefield, especially a female hero that reliably doubles enemies. What's better than 1 crit? 2 crits, baby! Still worried about Echidna's defenses? Don't worry. While her growths may not be great, her supporting partners can easily help her out. With her Ice Affinity, she can receive a whopping +5 to her defense and giving the right combination of pairings like Larum, Gonzalez, or Lot. With enough patience, and maybe a Draco Shield or 2, Echidna can serve as a dependable frontline unit with a lot of speed and accuracy. Not to mention, what's not to like about having a free hero unit? Heroes are generally one of the most reliable classes in Fire Emblem, boasting average stats across the board without necessarily excelling in anything else either. And that really summarizes Echidna well. She may not have a huge spotlight or impact in the army, but she does her role just enough to support her allies that still need to grow for the late game of the Binding Blade. While Echidna may not have long-term viability in your run, unless you want to invest her with stat boosters, I'd say Echidna deserves more attention for the benefits she can bring to the table as a mid-game pre-promote. Her first impression may not be great, but trust me, toss her steel axe. She is more helpful than you realize. Next up, it's a man that deserves way more recognition. Garret. Garret joins the squad at Chapter 15 as a pre-promoted berserker, and he even has hard mode bonuses. Now, when people look at Garret, their attention is immediately drawn to two details. Number 1, his speed stat. Hovering at around 11 to 12 speed with hard mode bonuses, this does admittedly make him struggle to reliably double enemies. On top of that, his growth in this stat is not very reliable. He is very unlikely to grow it at all. Secondly, his main weapon of choice. Axes are very unpopular in the Binding Blade due to their very low accuracy. And of course, his starting weapon is a steel axe. Good God, why does this weapon suck? Now, first impressions aside, I would like to propose why this man deserves more attention. Garret has access to arguably one of the best classes in GBA Fire Emblem, the Berserker. In Binding Blade, Berserkers have a whopping 30% boost to their crit rates. This effectively gives Garret a solid chance to delete any enemy he goes up against in combat, thanks to his high strength stat. Again, who needs speed if the enemy's health bar gets deleted in one shot? And if you give this man a killer axe? My friend, you're looking at a flat 60% crit boost between his class bonus and weapon. Now that's what I call peak performance. Speaking of peak, I would argue that Garret's joining chapter shows off his strengths brilliantly. All you need to do are two things. First, swap out his steel axe for either an iron axe, or even better, a juicy killer axe to patch out his accuracy issues. Secondly, park this beefcake on top of a peak tile. On a peak, Garret gains a massive 40% boost to his avoid, making him a very reliable dodge tank. Chapter 15 is filled to the brim with cavaliers and wyverns packing a crap load of lances. Given these two steps, just sit back and watch Garret slay these fools like Thorkel from Finland Saga. On top of that, there's one route in the Binding Blade that continues to show off Garret's merits. Garret's merits. In the Ilia route, other than Chapter 20A, there is plenty of terrain for Garret to utilize his strengths. Tired of turtling this northern choke point in Chapter 17A? Have Garret walk on water and flank the enemy. Need another unit other than a Philly Shield Flyer to get to the right side of Martel's map? Garret can get there pretty easily on his own, and he can even handle those pesky wyverns along the way. Are you terrified of Chapter 19A jump scaring you with Falco Knights? Don't worry, guess what this map has a lot of? Don't worry, I'll give you a couple seconds to think. There you go, that's right, peaks. Another common strategy Garret can do, even at base level, is sit in the mountains of Chapter 21. Garret can reliably dodge tank and even delete the wyvern squads in the early turns of this infamous map. This gives your army more action economy on which side of the map you want to focus on without having to devote too many resources to help out Garret. On top of that, he can even keep Gale busy. Generally, the mid to late game of the Binding Blade boasts a good amount of lance units, provided you're also playing the Ilia route. Garret has far more utility than people realize, even as just a backup unit. Now, I'm sure many people would argue Gonzalez is far more worthy to train, due to his availability and growth rates. Now, I would personally argue Garret has some benefits that Gonzi doesn't innately have. Firstly, Garret doesn't need a highly sought-out hero crest to promote. He requires zero investment right from the start, while Gonzalez has the issue of competing for a limited hero crest from the likes of these units. On top of that, Gonzalez has a very shallow 15% skill growth, as an axe unit. Meanwhile, Garret joins with a 15 to 17 skill stat as a level 1 berserker, and even a slightly higher skill growth of 25%. Not convinced? Here's an average promoted Gonzi if he were a level 20 brigand. Huh, other than speed and HP, Garret's honestly not too far behind Gonzi in terms of performance. If anything, why not pair up these two together? The combination of their affinities help immensely with patching out their shoddy hit rates and amplify their massive crit rates. And let's be honest, all of us love watching that crit number go up, so why not indulge it a little further with a Garret support? At the end of the day, I'd highly encourage giving Garret a try. Even if you just use him in Chapter 21 to keep the wyverns busy, why not give him a few levels prior on just his joining chapter? After all, who doesn't love some peak performance in the Binding Blade? Lastly, let's talk about another axe unit that deserves more praise. Arguably one of the best Fire Emblem dads out there who isn't dead. It's Bartre. When Bartre joins in Chapter 11b of the Western Isles, he comes out of the gate strong with an insane strength base of 22. And I see a lot of you are already rolling your eyes at his other stats. Now hold on now, you bunch of Rutger and Melody babies, hear me out on this one. While yes, Bartre lacks the speed to reliably double enemies, and lacks the skill to hit with his axes, Bartre does have a very solid boon that does make him dependable: bow access. Warriors with their high strength stat don't just need to go bonk with their axes, they can apply effective damage to scary looking flyers with just an iron bow. Given Bartre's high strength and a bow's high hit rate, Bartre can easily chip down enemy wyverns or Pegasus Knights that even try to look at him funny. If nothing else, he can provide excellent chip damage to any enemy with a bow, assisting in setting up kills for his squad. If nothing else, if there's a map filled with flyers, or you need a unit to replace a spot in the squad, give Bartre a bow and watch him go! Bartre also has one of the fastest growing supports in the game with his daughter, Fear. Fear's fire support gives Bartre a solid boost to his accuracy and crit rate, giving him that extra kick to help patch out his weaknesses. As a duo, Fear can provide the dodge tanking while Bartre can provide the punch. Given how slow many supports grow in the Binding Blade, having one that grows as fast as Fear and Bartre's is a very welcome boon. In my latest Ironman, I actually tested how potent this support pairing actually was. In Chapter 21, with just a B support from Fear, Bartre was more than capable of frontlining the enemy wyverns and paladins without much worry. His avoid stat became genuinely potent, even as just a warrior. Even if he did get hit, his HP pool was more than enough to keep him going for any lucky hits through those deadly enemy phases. Admittedly, I can't deny my personal love for the warrior class. In this game, they tend to get shafted in favor of the other Hero Crest classes, like the Swordmaster. And I completely get it. Swordmasters are powerful in the Binding Blade with their crit rate and accuracy, but it never hurts to give other comps a try. Fire Emblem has so much replay value when it comes to trying out various team compositions beyond just the optimal route. Bartre may not have the swiftness of a Swordmaster, nor the balanced stats of a hero, but if there's one thing he does well, is that he hits hard when it matters most. So, there you have it. Those are the units that I would personally recommend you try out in your next FE6 run. Are there any units that you think deserve more praise or attention? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd also like to give a shout out to Donlot for helping me out on this video, especially for his expertise on utilizing Barthe's strengths. He specializes in challenge runs of Fire Emblem games, mainly Ironmans, so please be sure to go check him out and subscribe to his channel. For me, the beauty of Fire Emblem is how you overcome the odds. You can choose how easy or difficult you want that to be. People love making optimal teams. People love making meme teams, and some people even like playing with 0% growths. And that's the beauty of Fire Emblem's design. It's the stories we share of how our squads became legends across the many playthroughs we collectively go on in this wonderful franchise. While we mostly focus on the strategy aspect of the series, we should also recognize the RPG elements that allow the units like the ones I just talked about in this video to shine, even among the GOATs. With that, my friends, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoy videos like this, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more Fire Emblem content. This is Davis G, signing off, and I wish you all a good day.